Some new tight ends and receivers have been named to the Miami Hurricanes transfer portal wish list. Here's the latest.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we're going to talk about something I never thought we would be discussing on a college athletic show, and that's Bill Belichick, the NFL GOAT, at least in terms of rings. My guy Don Shula still has more wins, but Bill Belichick is coming to the ACC to coach the North Carolina Tar Heels. What does that mean for Miami? What does it mean for the rest of college football? We're going to talk about the final decision for Cam Ward to play or not to play in the Pop Tart Bowl. That was the question. We now have the answer. And we're going to talk about the latest on Miami's transfer portal efforts. And folks, this portal is moving 100 miles an hour. By the hour, we're getting new updates on who may be visiting, when they're visiting, will they be visiting or not to Miami. And you can add a new one to the list as of this morning. Caleb Odom, who is a true freshman this season with the Alabama Crimson Tide. He has hit the transfer portal, and he's setting up his visits. Odom is going to be visiting Colorado this weekend. Now, his former high school quarterback is actually at Colorado, so, certainly the Buffs are one to look out for, but he's also planning to visit Miami December 17th through the 18th, and Ole Miss December 20th through the 21st. And going back to his recruitment in the class of 2024, Caleb Odom, by the way, for those who need a refresher, this guy was an absolute stud tight end / wide receiver. Now, one of the reasons why he wanted to go to Bama was they gave him the opportunity to play wide receiver, not tight end. He primarily lined up wide at Carrollton High School in Georgia. He's 6'5", 230-ish pounds, former 5-star recruit. For those of you who've been listening to Locked On Canes for the last couple of years, we talked about Caleb Odom a lot coming out of high school, class of 2024, because Miami was one of the finalists. Miami recruited this young man very, very hard, did not ultimately end up landing him. It seemed to be, my memory serves, between Ole Miss and Miami, and then Bama jumped in late, and he jumped at the opportunity, but now he's jumped into the transfer portal. So Odom is going to be visiting Miami December 17th through the 18th. If Miami is able to pull this off, this would be the result of playing 4D chess. Because something we often talk about with transfer portal prospects is when you're recruiting players out of high school, sometimes if you come in second or third place in that player's high school recruitment, college football has gotten so crazy with guys jumping into the transfer portal left and right. So if you came in second or third in a player's high school recruitment, a year or two down the road, you jump into the portal, or they jump into the portal, you might be ahead of the game in their portal recruitment because they already know about your staff and your recruitment. And in the case of Caleb Odom, it's only been one season at Alabama. So Miami is going to try and continue the relationships that they built with this player to get him back here after missing out on him initially. So building those relationships, building those foundations can be incredibly important down the road. Now, the interesting thing with Odom was, I think one of the reasons why Miami didn't land him in the first place was they saw him lining up at tight end, and he wanted to line up wide. And that was one of the reasons why he picked Alabama. He kind of focused in on schools that were willing to let him play wide receiver. I don't know if that's the case the second time around with Miami. If Miami's going to say, yeah, you know what, if you want to be, a 6'5", gigantic wide receiver, that's fine. But I know Miami initially envisioned his role as playing tight end here. So I don't know if he's not interested in blocking. I don't know what the case may be, but I can tell you, Caleb Odom, a wonderful young man. When he made one of his unofficial visits down to South Florida, down to Coral Gables during his recruitment, I recognized him because he's very, very tall. I saw his name tag and I struck up a conversation with him. This was, it must have been almost 2 years ago now, but He really was enjoying his Miami visit. He told me how appreciative he was of the staff, and he really loved the area. So Miami came pretty close the first time around. Let's see if Miami gets him the second time around. But you have to wonder a couple of things. Will, the ties with his high school quarterback who signed with Colorado, does that pull him to the Buffaloes? And is there going to be any sort of issue with whether or not he wants to play tight end or receiver here and what Miami would envision his role being? But great sign to get this guy locked in for a visit. Hopefully that visit goes through as planned. Again, this is a former 5-star recruit coming out of high school and somebody that Miami really wanted. Now, Miami is also hosting a different kind of tight end for a transfer portal visit this weekend, and that's Auburn tight end Micah Riley. Now, Micah Riley is far different from Caleb Odom, who's primarily a pass-catching weapon. Micah Riley, who's also more experienced, he's played 29 career games. This guy is an inline, primarily blocking tight end. In other words, if you're able to land Riley, he's the Cam McCormick replacement. McCormick, unfortunately, he's had the Van Wilder college football career. Actually, I think Van Wilder was a 7th-year guy in the movie. Cam McCormick has been in college 9 years. Well, this year was the last of those. He's going to be moving on. I could see McCormick maybe getting into coaching. If maybe there's a spot for him on the Miami staff, GA, I'm just thinking out loud, but he's out of eligibility. So Micah Riley is very much a Cam McCormick type of guy, 6'5", 266-pounder. It's like having an extra offensive tackle on the field. In his college career, he's only caught 3 passes for 2 touchdowns. So he can be a red zone weapon. 66% of his catches happen for touchdowns. So Micah Riley from Auburn is going to be visiting as well. Now, here's one that I don't think has locked in a Miami visit as of yet. This player, Kevin Concepcion, one of my favorite players in the transfer portal, regardless of position, period. This is a dude I would love to see at Miami, and Miami has made his final 6. And he's got a great list. He's coming out of NC State, slot receiver who can do everything. Kevin Concepcion, essentially, especially last year more than this year, they spread it around a little bit more this year. Like 2023, Concepcion was 80% of the Wolfpack offense. I mean, he was Mr. Everything for them and is a tremendous player. He's down to a final 6 of Alabama, Colorado, Florida State, Miami, South Carolina, and Texas A&M. So Miami makes his final 6. This guy would be the ultimate Xavier Restrepo replacement. Yeah, Restrepo, of course, is one of one. Had one of the greatest Miami Hurricanes careers ever. But, if you're trying to fill the very big shoes that Xavier Restrepo is leaving behind, you cannot do better. You cannot possibly do better than Kevin Concepcion. So hopefully they can line up a visit if he is considering Miami in his top 6. And I know KC, he does like Miami. I've been told that in the past, but obviously he's got a who's who of big time programs to look at, and including places like Alabama, South Carolina, Texas A&M in the SEC, along with Colorado and Florida State. And obviously Florida State is really trying to rebuild whatever the heck that was, 2-10 this past season. Talk a little bit more about some more wide receivers in addition to Concepcion, a former LSU player who seems to be strongly considering Miami, and I hope and think there's some optimism here. And we'll also talk some quarterback stuff, guys, and including Miami's current quarterback. Looks like he's going to do it one more time. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're going to talk about Bill Belichick as well. This is one of the most loaded episodes ever. That's what the transfer portal does. It's got us talking about 100 different things. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I am so thankful for the Gametime app. Guys, we talk about Gametime all the time, getting tickets to your favorite sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, musical theater. I just scored this week, and please don't tell my 6-year-old son about this, because this is a surprise. He doesn't watch Locked On Canes. He plays video games. I don't have to worry about him hearing it here. But my son, who's 6 years old, he's a huge AC/DC fan. Go figure. And I scored great seats at great prices for an upcoming AC/DC show in Tampa and I'm going to surprise my kid with those. And I could not be happier with the customer service experience that I've gotten at Gametime. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier, because Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Folks, I also love the all-in pricing feature. It shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And guys, the longer you wait, the prices tend to go down. You get the best deals last minute. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I, he's very upset about Concepcion leaving Raleigh, by the way. But we talk about the ACC, all the big storylines, including Bill freaking Belichick is coming to North Carolina. We broke that down last night. We'll have a new episode later on tonight of Locked On ACC, which, like this show, is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. There was an interesting note that Gabby Urrutia from 24/7 Sports Inside the U made about Miami's quarterback situation, and this is very. I wanted to read this because it's very much in line with conversations that we've been having for the past week here on Locked On Canes. We talked about this with the Truth Teller on Tuesday. We talked about this with Larry Bluestein on Wednesday when we were looking at Fernando Mendoza, who's now in the transfer portal. And I feel pretty strongly about this. And I know that a lot of times, listen, on Locked On Canes, we tell you what's going on. If there's quarterbacks in the portal we think Miami might pursue, we talk about it because it's news. But I don't want anyone to think that I am not an Emory Williams guy. I think Emory Williams has been developing very well behind the scenes. He's very respected and liked by his teammates. He's got leadership attributes. He's a very accurate quarterback. He works incredibly hard. I love the fact that Emory Williams got to have this past season being able to play and work behind a guy like Cam Ward to learn about his study habits and how to prepare for games, because Ward always approaches things like a professional, and I'm sure Emory learned a lot from that. So, you know, when I'm here and I bring up, hey, this quarterback, that quarterback is in the transfer portal, maybe Miami takes a look, that's not me saying, hey, I want to get rid of Emory Williams. No, I mean, I think Miami could be in a situation where Emory Williams may get the opportunity to be the starting quarterback. So Gabby Urrutia wrote, hey, again, Miami wants to be fair to Emory Williams because plenty in the building are fans of the redshirt freshman signal caller. That appears to be a real option on the table considering the quarterback market. It's unclear at the moment whether or not Cal transfer Fernando Mendoza moves the needle. So it sounds like Miami is non-committal there so far. Sounds like Indiana and Georgia are a few we've heard for Mendoza early on. Mendoza's little brother, Alberto, Bluestein talked about him yesterday, signed with the Hoosiers as a class of 2024 prospect. So it seems to me like I think the situation would be, I don't think Miami would take a really serious run at a transfer portal quarterback unless it's someone they are absolutely convinced is an upgrade over what they have in the room already. And maybe they haven't decided whether or not that's the case with a guy like Fernando Mendoza. So unless someone like John Mateer at Washington State, who's a bona fide stud, becomes available, maybe Miami is going to be really, really selective, because we've had all these conversations. I thought Larry Bluestein really articulated it well, that, you know, you have to be very careful with the idea that if you bring in a portal quarterback just for the sake of bringing in somebody, what does that mean for the rest of the room? If you're recruiting over your guys, right, do you risk maybe, you know, sending a message to Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, even, you know, Luke Nickel, who's just coming in this next season? Do you send a message to these guys that we're more interested in just going shopping every year than developing who we have? What kind of a message do you send? So unless you know you're getting an absolute bona fide stud and upgrade maybe you don't do anything there. And it sounds to me like Miami is mindful of that and respectful of that. And I think that's a good sign. So I'm not telling you they won't get a transfer portal quarterback, but I'm telling you, hopefully they don't go for one unless they know they're getting, and I'd hate to compare anyone to Cam Ward, but unless they feel like they're getting somebody who can have that kind of an impact, maybe they don't make a play here. So I thought that was an interesting note on the quarterbacks. So we mentioned Miami in the top 6 for Kevin Concepcion from North Carolina State, who would be, certainly my top option at receiver if you could grab the guy. But I like CJ Daniels from LSU. And guys, this is another one where you build the long-term relationships, and maybe it didn't work out a year or two ago. Sometimes players will circle back to you. And CJ Daniels, so he just arrived at LSU last year. He had come out of Liberty, and Miami was one of the finalists for him in the portal last year. So they came in probably second for him last season. Maybe CJ Daniels circles back, and he's going to be visiting Miami this weekend, and there seems to be some optimism there. This is what his NIL agent told Kane Sport. He said, quote, "He was close to committing to Miami last year. The quarterback situation is what held it back," he said. "We were waiting on that. He locked in with LSU a day or two before Cam Ward announced he was going to Miami." So, okay, if Cam Ward had come to Miami like 2 days earlier, we would have had CJ Daniels as well. We might have had Jeremiah Smith as well if Ward had locked in before National Signing Day. He said that was the reason he didn't go. He didn't even visit last year because of the quarterback situation. So again, he's given Miami another long, hard look, but then that makes me wonder, if CJ Daniels is so selective about Miami's quarterback situation, and I get it, you're a wide receiver. You want to make sure, you're in a good quarterback situation. How does he feel about Emory Williams? So hopefully Emory gets a chance to visit with CJ when he's down here. And or maybe CJ Daniels knows something we don't about who Miami may go after in the portal. But it sounds to me like the same way he made his decision, very much based off of a quarterback situation a year ago. It may come down to that again with CJ Daniels. Another wide receiver, we mentioned this yesterday. Hurricanes are going to have Eric Rivers from FIU visiting this weekend. He set single season receiving record for the Golden Panthers last year. Local guy, obviously wouldn't have to travel very far to move from FIU to Miami. Might live in the same place, maybe, maybe closer to Coral Gables might be a better option for him. But Eric Rivers is someone who I think really likes Miami. We'll see how mutual that is, because I think if Miami makes an offer, he might end up becoming a Miami Hurricane. And he's 5'11" range. He could end up being a really good one for the slot. So maybe that's a guy who could end up being, if not Concepcion, maybe Eric Rivers could end up being an Xavier Restrepo replacement. Miami has offered Tulsa running back Lloyd Avant with 3 years of eligibility left. But I think it was David Lake at Inside the U who made a good point that, hey, this is, if Miami offers Lloyd Avant, or they offered him, if they bring him in, it's a depth thing. Like this guy's not going to be, he's not going to be winning the starting job over Mark Fletcher or Jordan Lyle or Damian Martinez if he comes back. And Martinez might be close to 50-50, they say. He might come back to Miami next year, but you need to have a deep running back room. Because you remember in the 2022 season, Miami had 4 scholarship running backs, and then somehow they were down to playing walk-ons because guys were getting injured left and right. So you've got to have depth and insurance at that position, and it seems like Lloyd Avant from Tulsa would be that sort of an option. We've talked about Liberty interior offensive lineman Jordan White, who's visiting this weekend, possible Zach Carpenter replacement. Miami also offered UCF center Jonathan Klein, who they recruited out of high school a couple cycles ago. And, the last time Miami brought in a UCF center, Matt Lee, it worked out pretty well. So, maybe Jonathan Klein could be a good option there to play center next year. So that's what we're looking at right now, transfer portal wise. So Cam Ward, Miami's starting quarterback, was on Sports Center last night. And we'll tell you what he had to say when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm only getting started with FanDuel. Folks, America's #1 sportsbook has you ready to tackle all the NFL action on FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and college football all in one place. Hurricanes are slight favorites, by the way, against Iowa State for the Pop Tarts Bowl. So you want to make sure you get your action for that, guys, and all the NFL action. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you also check out Locked On College Football. I was actually invited, I think, for tomorrow's episode. I'm going to be on with Spencer McLaughlin talking about Miami's quarterback situation. So he's curious about it. We will talk about it. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available free on YouTube. So Cam Ward on SportsCenter last night, he confirmed he's going to play in the Pop Tart Bowl. Cam Ward is opting in, and I'll share with you part of an off-air conversation that I had with Larry Bluestein, and I'm not going to mention the name of the player that he talked to, but like he told me that right after when Miami missed out on the CFP, when it was official, Hurricanes are not in the playoff, and then they accept the Pop Tart Bowl bid. Blue talks to a Miami player, and he's like, "Hey, it's too bad. Like everyone's probably going to opt out," and that player told him, "No, we're all opting in." They talked about it, and all the players agreed. It sounds like all the upperclassmen, all the draft eligible guys, they want to opt in and play in this bowl game. We already know now Cam Ward confirmed he's going to play. Damian Martinez had already confirmed he was going to play. I've heard some mixed reports on Xavier Restrepo and Jalen Rivers, but it sounds to me like everyone's going to play, including all these guys. Ward, we know. Martinez, we know. They're all going to suit up and play in the Pop Tart Bowl. And folks, I know some of you don't care because, it's the Pop Tart Bowl. It's not the CFP. Some of you were like really excited at let's just play all the kids. Let's see all the young guys. But I'm telling you, folks, I think it's important that everyone, Cam Ward included, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, that these guys are opting in, because that, to me, it sets a fantastic example for the future. It sets an example to the rest of college football. And I've got to hope and I've got to think that this is going to be good for Miami's football culture long term. Because when we still have work to do. I mean, Miami is one of the most penalized teams in the country. So I'm not going to say the culture is perfect. But when we were all ripping the culture up in Tallahassee last year, when not only did all of their draft eligible guys opt out of the Orange Bowl, even guys who were going to be back on the team this year opted out of the bowl game last year. We trashed Florida State, and rightfully so, because they appeared to have a team full of mercenaries. Miami doesn't. Miami does not have a team full of mercenaries. I love the example that this sets in an era of college football and it's been like an epidemic the past 3-4 years. If you're not in a CFP game, you're opting out of your game. It's not important. Bowl game doesn't matter. The idea of being there for your teammates, putting your team, your culture, your brothers, putting that before your own individual needs, that speaks volumes to me. So I think this is an important step for all these guys to opt in. Not to mention, again, I know some of you are like, it's the Pop Tart Bowl. Who cares? I mean, first of all, I unfortunately, being named after a breakfast pastry doesn't really make it sound very prestigious. But the Pop Tart Bowl is actually a good bowl game. They take the top non-CFP ACC team and the second non-CFP Big 12 team. So it's actually it's one of the better consolation prizes out there, the Pop Tart Bowl. But I want to win 11 games. I want to see this group of draft guys, seniors, I want to see them go out on a high note, and you're going to need all hands on deck. Iowa State's a good football team, and they're not going to have any opt-outs. So you're going to need You're going to need your best players to win this bowl game. To win 11 games for the first time since 2003, that would mean something to me. So I would like to see this group go out with a win, and I'm proud. I cover this team. I cover these players. It's a great locker room, a great group of individuals that comes together to form a great team. The idea that the guys who don't have to play, and some of you think shouldn't play in this bowl game, that they're suiting up for each other, it means a lot to me. And so I'm going to say thank you, Cam Ward. God bless all of you. Now, wow, this is interesting. Bill Belichick has signed on official. I'm hearing a 3-year deal. Some people were saying maybe a 5-year deal, but Bill Belichick is going to become the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Listen, this is going to it's good for the ACC, I guess. I mean, the greatest NFL coach of all time. He's not going to the SEC. He's not going to the Big Ten. He's coming to the ACC. You know, I'm not usually the guy who waves that ACC banner, but I mean, this is good for the conference. It's going to be fascinating watching coaching matchups. You know, Bill Belichick versus Mario Cristobal, and Bill Belichick versus Brent Key and Brent Pry and Mike Norvell and Dabo Sweeney. Like, you're talking about the most decorated NFL coach in history with his 6 Super Bowl rings coming to college. Now, this is a fascinating experiment, and I will say this. I'm not saying Belichick in North Carolina won't work or can't work, but I'm glad somebody else is doing this and not my team, because at the end of the day, the risk you're taking to hand over the keys to your football program to someone who is about to be 73 years old and in his 49-year coaching career has never coached in college in any way, shape, or form. His father had a couple of jobs in the 50s. His father was actually an assistant briefly at North Carolina in the 1950s. So there's your UNC tie-in. But it is risky, folks, because coaching college, especially with the changing landscape and a lot of stuff that his pal Nick Saban didn't want to deal with the NIL culture and all that, Bill Belichick now has to come and deal with it, having zero experience at this level. Now, it doesn't mean he's not going to identify and hire the right people. He can probably attract a really good staff because of who he is and what he's accomplished. He's probably going to have to lean on those people to navigate the intricacies of the college game that he's not used to. But it's a risk, folks. And also, Belichick at North Carolina specifically, this could, if it's not managed well, if he doesn't have alignment with the trustees, I think they call them regents up there, with the university chancellor, with the athletic department, they need to have alignment, because North Carolina's athletic department has turned into a bit of a mess in recent years. In fact, it seems like they undercut their own athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, to make this hire. They didn't really let him conduct the search. They kind of went behind his back to make this Belichick deal. So already they're showing some signs of dysfunction. However, it looks like North Carolina, which has not really been a player the way that they should be in recent years in the NIL game, they've fallen behind in some of that. They have pledged to increase their football NIL budget from about $4 million a year to $20 million. Where that money is coming from, I don't know. Perhaps the enthusiasm of adding Belichick is going to make the boosters go crazy. They're going to be cutting checks left and right. We'll see how that plays out. But, you know, North Carolina has been known as a dysfunctional spot. And again, you have the risk here of bringing in someone who is essentially aged out of NFL coaching. Teams don't want to hire him, I think, because he's about to be 73 years old. And he's going to come and learn. You know, I know football is football. I get it. The X's and O's stuff is essentially the same. But the landscape of coaching in college is so different from coaching in the NFL. This is a risk move. Now, it might be high risk, high reward. And, you know, also it may come with some baggage. There's some rumors out there that he's trying to set up his son, Stephen Belichick, to become coach in waiting. So there may be some nepotism in play there as well. But this is a high risk, high reward move by the North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm curious to see how it works out, and it's going to be crazy. Future matchups with North Carolina. You know, I know our guy Chill, if he's watching this, is already saying, "How's Mario going to coach against Bill Belichick? This guy's going to coach circles around everybody." Oh, we'll see how it goes. I'm fascinated by this, whether it's going to be a train wreck or a huge success. Carolina, by the way, has only had one double-digit win football season in the last 27 years. So they badly want to turn that around. And maybe UNC, their basketball team's not doing so well. Is UNC now a football school? But I'm curious, especially if if Belichick and Cristobal start competing for a lot of the same recruits. Historically, we don't recruit a lot of the same players as North Carolina. I can't recall too many recruiting battles where like this player's got Miami and UNC at his finalist list. Maybe we'll see more of that now with Bill Belichick in town. But folks, if you want to drop your thoughts on Belichick below, let us know how you feel in the comments. He's coming to the ACC. This can only raise the profile of the league. And you know what? I'm thinking out loud here. Every year I cover the ACC kickoff media conference. I can finally ask a press conference question to Bill Belichick next year. I've never been able to do that. I've never covered the Patriots when he was there. So I don't know. Maybe I'll ask him a question he doesn't like, and he'll stare daggers at me. He likes to do that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Smash that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And we'll talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.